Next, let's do NIST 837. Go ahead and open that puppy and give me a when you got it open.
Got it.
You got it. Notice your authority statement. Again, same stuff as before. You start seeing the pattern, so I can start skipping this stuff. FSMA, OMB Circular 830. February 2010, so just a couple years ago. In the beginning of the documents, compliant with NIST standard and guidelines, FIPS is referenced on page IV. Special publications tells us what they are. So let's go. Okay, this is going to be your risk management framework document. So let's go. All right, so the background of this is NIST partnership with the DoD that shows the relationship. Also, National Security System, the Committee on National Security Systems, the training, that's the baseline of the training. Also, the CNA process and the risk management framework. This risk management partnership is huge. The purpose, this publication provide guidelines for risk management. A risk management framework. So what does that mean? This is a key right here. What is NIST saying to us?
Just recommendations.
Yeah, we recommend that you follow this, but does that mean you have to? No, probably a good idea, don't get me wrong, but you can interpret it as you need. You can apply it as necessary. And because not every system is evaluated the same. All right, to ensure that managing information system related to security risks is consistent with the mission or business objectives. And also, I believe that you will start seeing this language a little bit differently. The ISAC Corporation speaks very highly of governance. Governance is a new keyword. Has to deal with basically aligning the business objectives to the mission of the company and basically incorporating, all of IT in a very constructive way. So you will start seeing that language more and more and more. To ensure that the security requirements, necessary controls are integrated into the architecture. So they call that baking it in. You ever heard that term before? You bake it in. You're integrating the controls as part of the architecture. So inside your architecture or your design, the controls are built into that. So you go into the design with the controls in mind, as opposed to drawing a paper napkin of what you want and in terms of architecture and then not even hitting the controls. Again, FIPS 199, FSMA's referenced, OMB Circular 180. The audience, anybody who designs, develops, implements, operate, maintain. What is that? It's another way of saying?
Life cycle.
Life cycle, exactly. For federal systems. So it's life cycle for federal systems. It deals with mission, business objectives, individuals with development, and or system or security management or oversight responsibilities. And then they actually are kind enough to put the roles in here, which is nice. So that's who it's to. And then it actually does the risk management framework. So at this point, I'm going to leave this alone. We're going to come back to this, I'm sure, several times. But at this point, I've pretty much gave you the 50,000 foot view of 837. Yeah, this stuff will look familiar. Just take a peek at that. That's your life cycle. You will see this again, probably in a couple slides. All right, so, whoops, did we forget one? Yes, we did. NIST 800-137. Whoops. All right. Let's just let it in. Last one, and then we can hit them specifically. Again, notice this one specifically references the information tech. Never mind. I thought it was ITIL. All of your background is the same: FISBA, Circular A130. All right, so establish, implement, and maintain information security control management. Define, establish, implement, analyze, respond, and review and update. So the average person sees this, but what do you guys see? Begins with an L. Life cycle.
Okay.
Still life cycle, just in a different way. And you establish, that's basically all your upfront stuff, your criteria, your team building, your chartering. You implement, well, you had to go from design to actually implementing. Then you had to maintain or control, and then it's rinse and repeat. Life cycles always end with rinse and repeat. In other words, monitor, control, monitor, control, monitor, control, until disposal. So even though it doesn't say disposal, it's right there. All right, what this will help you do is maintain situational awareness, assess security controls, collect, correlate, analyze security information. That's more of your side of the fence. Provide actual communication of security statuses, active management of risk. Now, I can tell you this. Most of us, nobody's acting as the IAM at the moment, or CISO, or, all right. Their language is different. They speak the risk language. So for you to move mountains in the workplace, you have to speak the language of risk. So this is a very, very powerful document if understood and applied appropriately. I'm not saying you have to run around the office place and quote NIST documents, but basically, if you're talking to a CEO or CIO or even chief security officer, you need to speak to those people in terms of risk. I just went to the EC Council's Chief Information Security Officer conference, which was boring. But it was not the most exciting conference that I went to. And by the end of the day, too, I was so tired of people talking in high-level language with no meat to it. Well, we need to identify our risks and apply our controls, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like there's no substance put together. It's basically a generic, everybody muscled their way with generic language through it, which is important because, CEOs, CISOs, they normally focus on the mission of the company, the teamwork, and the leadership to get there, as opposed to technical people or the folks on the actual ground doing the stuff. They typically focus on, cash flow, systems, communication, and then the actual technical products themselves, as opposed to leadership, teamwork, and the mission. So this is a guide for applying, they're just referencing 37 there. So background, 1997, OMB, required the agency to review their information systems. There really was no good way to do that. In the early days, being in the 90s, they basically said you needed to do this ongoing. And everybody scratched their head and went, all right, sure. And they would literally, in some cases, just change the dates on the reports and then send them back over. Same one year after year after year in the earlier days. Pretty hard to get away with that now. All right, but again, FISMA comes in, OMB memorandums come in place. 800, 37 and 39 time this. Purpose of this guideline, we recommend, but that's consistent, is to assist the organization developing a strategy to implement a security program that provides awareness of threats, vulnerabilities, and visibilities to organizational assets, and then effectiveness. Also, there's differences in the words here. Threats, vulnerabilities, That's risk-oriented, threats, vulnerabilities, exposures, threat agents, countermeasures. Those are all risk. Visibility has to do with really communicating that effectively across the organization, but it's the effectiveness and efficiency. And effectiveness simply means did it work or not, and efficiency just means was it done in the best possible way. So you can be completely effective but not efficient whatsoever. And then you can be completely efficient but not effective. So there's differences in some of these words. All right, so the individuals with business ownership, system development, and security strategy, and then again, that's recycled information there. Life cycle again, organization-wide stuff. Okay, watch this one. This was a good one to know. Simply because, not that I really think that you'll be tested on this specifically, as in, hey, what's tier 1? But what you can do is you can apply things like this to get the level of the organization. And that is an extremely effective test-taking strategy. No, in other words, you just read one of these questions and you go, well, where's this happening? Is this happening at the business or mission level? Are they talking about governance to the organization? Or is it even higher than that? Because there's actually a tier 0 here. It's important to realize that. To any organization, you have, let's say, I don't know, Department of Transportation. The outside influence to that department is basically tier 0, or interagency, between agencies. Yeah. So like, how does Office of Management and Budget affect the Department of Transportation? Right? That's an outside influence. Or is there a law or regulation? FSMA is an outside influence. There's nothing you can do about it. You have to follow the law, right? So you're going to do it or not. So it doesn't matter if the organization or the company, again, I'm going federal and non-federal, but that still doesn't matter. You have to follow the law. So then once you're inside the organization, then it's at the highest level, the strategy. Well, let's do it like this. Break this down. It's 3 tiers. Generally, it's 3 tiers. 1, 2, 3. This is strategic. And you can use this on this exam. It's actually a very, very helpful test-taking technique. What are they talking about? What's this question talking about? Is it talking about very, very high-level strategy / visionary type stuff? Tactical and operational. Operational just means daily. So the day-to-day stuff or the long-term vision. So this would be 1, 3, and 5 year. This is generally quarters, and this is weeks to months. So when we talk about risk management framework, what level do you think that would be?
Strategic.
Yeah, right? We're going to bake it in the organization. We're going to be doing it ongoing throughout the life cycle the whole time. So very long-term oriented, as opposed to a specific certification or control categories. If I'm asking you about control categories, do you think that's more strategic, tactical, or operational? I don't know, contingency planning, for example. That's probably more strategic. But see, even though that's a control category that's visionary or strategic, in the control in itself, you're monitoring it at the daily level or at the tactical level, right? So you have to filter it out and define. So in my answers, I see things like A, B, C, D. I would see something like strategy, tactical, operational. So what's the pattern? could probably do this anyway, but humor me. It's an easy grouping exercise. Now again, I could do that in different ways. I could have done, that grouping, and then, that's getting confusing now. Well, or that grouping. Does that make sense? Am I confusing the heck out of you at this point? Or does that make any sense whatsoever?
Why did you lump A, B, and C together?
Well,
I understand the two tactical options.
Let's do it in two different colors. So in this case, strategy and tactical, that was more high level. I grouped those with the high level, and the operational is the low.
Gotcha.
So I chose that as the, and again, this is generic, but I chose that as the oddball one. But in the second, so I did that. And so this one would be, all depends on where the question comes from. It was coming from a strategy point of view, and then I said the operational one to figure that out. From an operational point of view, I put the strategy one. Because it's that polar opposite. And then once you get inside these, then it's still that same grouping, it's just now I flipped from that to this one, depending on which direction. So it's just different ways to prove your answer in terms of processing them, and then ultimately getting to the point where you pass. You have to be thinking about this stuff when you take this test. Or your choice, your alternative is read the questions with the answer. All right, so we went a couple pages into that continuous monitoring control system. So this is going to be our second one. All right, so all of this, when you apply that ongoing monitoring, we'll just run through this very quickly. Would it make sense that things would be more, things would be more cost effective, clearly risk-based? You're doing more due diligence. What's the difference between due diligence and environmental? Exactly. Due care means you actually work. So, let's do an example. I'm sorry, officer. I didn't know I was. Care due diligence, one, the other, or both. So, I'm sorry, officer. I didn't know I was. And that person got pulled over. Did they do their due diligence? No, because they didn't know what this season was. Did they practice and care? No, because they're going to get tickets. These questions are very much the chicken and half eggs, the egg and half and banana questions. So they're not going to say due diligence and care, but in that example, I'm sorry, officer, I didn't know I was speeding. There's clearly due diligence and care in there. It's not what you see. You don't see. They'll hit you with this exam. So sometimes when I'm reading these questions, I'll say, oh, that's due diligence, and as soon as I see due diligence, then I'll look for due care, and if due care practice or not. And that'll be the insight as to what the limit.
So the due diligence is research?
Yep. Find out what laws you need to follow, and we can follow, you need to find out what laws you need to follow, and you need to verify actually following the law. So why in the McDonald's do you have the wet floor sign? Among probably several reasons. You think the company has done their due diligence to know that if the floor is wet, somebody could get hurt? Probably did their due diligence to figure that out. So they practice due care by displaying the sign to warn you by practicing due care. So even that, the McDonald's wet floor sign, there's an element of due care and due diligence there. They don't come out and say that. But you have to be able to extrapolate that from the question. So, and I don't know if I made this incredibly clear, but just, I'm beating a dead horse, please let me know. If anything, it just makes for good practice. Actually, let me do it like this. Blah, 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 disclosure. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 confidentiality. Blah, 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 more stuff, more crap. Privacy. Blah, 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 blah. And unauthorized modification. Blah, 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 blah. What's the pattern? It's not what you see, it's what you don't see. What's the grouping pattern? I want to know what the grouping pattern is. And I want to know why you grouped it that way. When I show you, you'll go, aha. Think out loud. You can ask questions.
Would it be A and C? Or is that not the question you asked?
What's the pattern and why? A and C would be part of one pattern, but you're missing one.
BCD would be CIA?
Oh, close.
And B and D?
Disclosure is confidentiality.
Oh, okay.
Confidentiality is confidentiality. Privacy is confidentiality. And unauthorized modification would be integrity. That's a 3-in-1 grouping. It's not what you see, it's what you don't see. People can fail, you can fail your practice and tests simply because you don't pick up on those subtle differences. And by the way, when you get to a question and you look at it and go, I have no idea what this question is, most people don't look at it and stare at it hard enough or long enough. Granted, you only have a minute, but you have to find a pattern. It's not coming to you right away, but typically there is a pattern. You just need to spend more time looking at it. I find that most people just give up right away and belly up and just see and then move on. You don't have to do that. There's typically a pattern there based on the way people write tests. You gotta find it for some reason. OSI model is great pattern stuff, especially for the ethical hacking exam. Practice test. So back to the risk and ongoing monitoring maintenance, right? If you were actually doing that, in theory, you would be more cost effective. You would be more consistent, which just means all the, happening all the time, or repeatable, if you will. You could go capability maturity model on this one right here, right? You guys know what CMM is? Capability maturity model, level 1 through 5. Mm-hmm. 5 is very, very refined processes and repeatable processes, where 1 is basically you just fly off the seat of the hook, fly out of the seat of your pants. Better understanding of risks if you're ongoing and monitoring, because there's less of an unknown because you're actually looking for stuff. And the information that you work with has higher integrity or trustworthiness. Write this down. Back to the IAC triad, write down trustworthiness under integrity. Typically, integrity and trustworthiness are the same thing. You trust your data. And also under integrity, you can do assurance. So under integrity, I want you to write assurance and trustworthiness. Notice how I keep going back to the IAC triad? There's a specific reason for that. In most classes, and most instructors, or especially someone who hasn't taught something a ridiculous amount of times, there's an advantage of teaching something 150 times. You see patterns after the 50th time that you didn't see before. After you teach it 100 times, you'll find a new pattern. And you'll constantly, at teaching it, you'll find yourself boiling it down to the same basics. So in the material, if you pull, I'm willing to bet you $5, Lewis, if you pull up your IAC Squared book and you go in the first 5 or 10 pages, you'll find a reference to the IAC triad and probably see very little references to the actual triad from there on out. You'll see integrity here, confidentiality there, but they won't tell you how important that model is. I'm telling you that that is a fundamental model, and you can actually use it to solve problems. You have to solve the right problem. Make sure you're working on the right problem. If the question is asking about integrity, you better pick an integrity answer. If you have an integrity problem, you are not going to fix it by applying confidentiality. It's the wrong formula for the wrong problem. So trustworthiness, and what was the other word begin with an A?
Assurance?
Assurance. Those are both integrity oriented. Hey, that looks familiar. And it's good that the company the way I could remember this one. Ken, Sam, implies something, manual. You can come up with different ways to remember the mnemonics to remember them. I don't know off the top of my head, but in study groups before, we've done that to where we actually go through the information and find an easy way to remember it. Because if you can put an order to something, it might help you get out. Again, it's an easy way to remember it. Ken, Sam, implement, and assess authorization. So let's put office and management budget. Management. All right, so there's the Office of Federal Financial Management, OFM. After that, coordinates the activities of the chief financial officers and senior real property officers. You got your Office of Federal Procurement Policy, Office of Government. That would be Vivek Kundra. You have your Office of Performance and Personnel Management. See, in my opinion, it'd be a lot easier to work for these agencies. I'm not ever bothered with that. And watch this. Since there's Office of Management and Budget, you would imagine that there's a regulatory arm as opposed to a law or a legal arm. Just the wording. So circulars, things like budgets, state and local governments, federal procurement. So this is the big things. Hence, circular A130, as opposed to memoranda, which is further explanation and of guidance. And again, we saw that. Also, circulars identified by the A and the number, so it's good to recognize that. So A130, policy for management of federal resources. Again, the reference to the website should help with that. Paperwork reduction admin to the voting submit. And this is kind of important. A130 can also be thought of as a one-stop shop for policy and guidance for information technology. Think about that. Everybody needs to stop. Paragraph. So in that case, it is a one-stop shop. Easy to reference. And we did all these, right? With something like this, you want to just circle like details of the nose on your face. Yeah, have a quick, short blow on it. record, record. I want to do it because what happens is when most people go to these types of classes, they're apply, and then when you go to the exam, you have to regurgitate, you have to apply, and now the words are coming. So at some point, you have to apply, you have to explain your tactics. Once you get over that hump, that's a lot easier. You're just simply talking about the